How's everybody doing? This is an incredible festival. I'm really glad to be here, super honored to be a part of it. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you all for coming out. I'm Zac. I'm a co-founder of, it's a venture-backed software company called OpenGov. We've raised about $80 million in venture capital on a really challenging mission to power more effective and accountable government. I got a call a couple days ago as I was getting excited to come over here from the CIO of the city of Baltimore. It's a guy I'd met a couple months before in a sales meeting. And he said, Zac, I got to talk to you. Why the hell are you doing this? This is crazy. Why wouldn't you go sell software to businesses or build some consumer app where you could make a lot more money? You're selling to cash-strapped, old-line governments. This was like my prospect, who I was excited about. This is the phone call it gives me. And I said, look, first of all, we think there's a real business here. In fact, we have a thesis that you can build real businesses in the most neglected, out-of-way places in the old-line industries. Not just the sexting apps and mobile games, but tackling really hard problems. So we're obviously on a mission to prove that, but we're also super mission-driven. I couldn't spend my time and my life building whatever you want to call it, billing software, mobile games, sexting apps, all the stuff in Silicon Valley. This is what we want to do, and the people in the company have gathered together because they're crazy just like me. And they say they want to go home in 5 or 10 years and tell their parents or tell their kids, look what we have done for our communities and our country. Let me share with you for a minute why that's important to me specifically, like why I love this mission. It's a marriage, if you will, of my love for entrepreneurship. I was an entrepreneur from a young child, 8 years old, mowing lawns and running around like probably a lot of people in the audience. But my father worked in government. I grew up in Maryland. My father worked at the National Academy of Sciences. In D.C., government is to the district what like tech is to the Bay Area. It's freaking everywhere. And out there, out where I live now in the valley, nobody has they don't even know what a city manager is. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? I got influenced, though, growing up in D.C. I studied government in college. I went to law school. I did a master's degree in public administration. And then after grad school, I went to Mexico. I studied corruption in the Mexican government on a Fulbright fellowship. I had a brief law career, and then I went overseas to Afghanistan. I served as an advisor to H.R. McMaster on the anti-corruption task force. And we actually started OpenGov while I was living in a shipping container in Kabul. When Andreessen Horowitz invested in us, they said, the shipping container must be the new garage, which I thought was funny. For the prior couple of years, that was 2012, for the prior couple of years, we'd been studying why governments were going bankrupt right after the recession. In our home area, we started talking with budget directors. So by the way, 3 governments in California went bankrupt. It's unbelievable, 3. 12 were predicted to go bankrupt. This is 2009, 10, 11. Some of you may remember this. And we started talking with budget directors, CIOs, managers. We said, hey, give us your budget data. We'll help you leverage what was then a new breed of web technologies. So you can drill through your data, see trends across the years, share your finances. And they said, wow, that sounds really useful. How do we get to our budget data? And we were like, you're the freaking budget director. What do you mean, how do you get us your budget data? And they said, come sit with us and look what we're dealing with. Well, we sat with them. The state of California was using an accounting system that ran on COBOL. How many people in the room know what COBOL is? The people I work with they've never even seen software that wasn't delivered on the internet. The city of Palo Alto had paid $10 million to a German software conglomerate called SAP for an ERP system that was delivered on 20 disks and had green screens. These governments couldn't even see where their money was going because they're using 40-year-old on-premise legacy transactions processors. You'd have to run an object query in your Oracle database just to pull out 5,000 rows of data, collate it. Now, their elected officials didn't know what was going on. And most people don't always understand the elected officials, they're supposed to govern and make policy. So they're asking questions, this pissing the staff off. They're all fighting with each other. The citizens are losing trust, getting disengaged. They find out what happens 6 months after the budget's passed. And the staff themselves can't even be strategic. They're collating all the data and spending a life in Microsoft Excel fixing errors. So we said we have to do something about this. And we envisioned a cloud platform that allows all these people to leverage the millions of dollars they've spent on their technology infrastructure, but allows them to do their higher order work in OpenGov. And the reason we have governments is to raise revenue and figure out how to spend it according to the community's priorities or principles. So we've built this full budget development suite where you can actually allocate all of the money you plan to spend as a government. And then you can track it with performance measurement and management reporting so you see where the money goes and what you get for it. Performance measurement, KPIs, targets, goals, and then bring the community along with you with a complete suite of open data tools, financial transparency, storytelling, citizen feedback, to try to drive a virtuous loop, if you will, where citizens have a hand in what's happening and government officials are being strategic, saying, hey, you can get more guns or you can get more butter, but you can't have both. You choose, council. And how many people heard Dan Rather last night, by the way? It was pretty good, right? I thought it was super. He and Dahlia, they were talking about a lot of problems we have. They were talking about macro level problems, but really serious problems. And I found it kind of incredible watching him up there, and I thought it was a wonderful conversation. It was also a little melancholy. And it's real, though. We're dealing with serious problems. I'm putting my finger on one of them, but there's politics, there's strife, there's uncertainty. This is an incredible time. I want to share with you why I think there's a good news story in all of this and bring up some of the stories I'm hearing on the ground. We're out there like selling software to every city, town, county, school district, special district, state agency in the country. And there's a once-in-a-generation shift that we're seeing, not just from old tech to new tech, but from an old way of governing to a new way of governing. We're seeing government officials, and we're trying to foment the movement ourselves, what we call the open impact movement. The old world of governing, think of smoky back rooms, dusty filing cabinets, citizens finding out where the money went like, a year after the decisions were made, and everyone fighting with each other and kind of nothing getting done. And then there's a new way of governing where you actually get citizen priorities in the mix, and it's a collaborative budget building process. You put the money after programs that work and not after programs that don't, and you measure how you're doing, and you drive evidence-based decision making, as the Bloomberg folks would talk about. And this is happening in the country, not least as evidenced by the hundreds and hundreds of governments that are signing on to our platform. And we're calling it the open impact movement. We think of it as having the real power to change how kind of Main Street operates. And that, for us, drives us. It's an iterative cycle where we get more and more fired up as we can deliver more and more value for these communities and see what they can do. I want to share a story. Edgewood, Kentucky, tiny, small town in northern Kentucky, probably not wildly different than Charlottesville, but maybe a quarter of the size. The manager goes to Tuesday council meeting. Everyone's staying late, and he says, we've got to raise property taxes so we can fund more firefighters. We're in a serious situation here. Council member stands up and says, I'm not paying more in property taxes. My citizens don't want that. We pay all this money in property taxes, blah, 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 blah. In the old world of governing, this thing is dead. This initiative's dead. In the new world of governing, this city manager puts up, literally on a big screen, he puts up 5-year trend line on exactly what's been paid in property taxes. And he says, let's talk about the facts. This is what we're paying. This is what will happen if we do not increase property taxes. This is what will happen if we do. The council member sits down, measure passes that night. 4 firefighters get funded. Response times in the community drop by like 2 minutes from 7 to 5 or something like that. And a few months later, a citizen has a heart attack. Firefighters roll out there. They get there in about 5 minutes, save the guy's life. They think he would have been dead had they been a minute or two later. The citizen is so overjoyed with the response and the effectiveness of his government that he buys half a dozen defibrillators for the fire department. And it's almost like this really nice circle. We love the story because it drives home what can happen when people start working together and the community starts solving its own problems. At the macro scale, the state of Ohio bought a license to our financial transparency software for every government in the entire state of Ohio. So we have 1,000 governments in Ohio that have dumped the whole contents of their accounting systems into OpenGov, branded as Open Checkbook, and they went from 46th most transparent state in the nation to number 1, 2 years in a row. So something is happening out there, and we think it's really positive. We call it the Open Impact Movement, and I wish I could tell you that it's been easy. The CIO of Baltimore was well justified in calling me because it's been extremely difficult. Selling software to governments requires basically that you be batshit crazy, that you persevere, and that you you build a team out of people who are like-minded. And I'll share some lessons learned in closing here. The first three, which I just mentioned, those are kind of table stakes. You'll read about those in entrepreneurship books or management books, and I would agree with them. You really do have to, if you want to start a company, or especially if you want to tackle an old line industry or a really hard problem, you have to be crazy. People are going to laugh at you. If they're laughing at you, you might actually be onto something. And you're going to get said no to, like 9 times out of 10, or typically 99 times out of 100. You got to be prepared to pick yourself up off the floor and keep going. Your perseverance, what people call grit or determination, it's absolutely key. The third one is you got to build a team. You can't do anything alone. Just like you can't build a government alone or a community alone, you can't build a company alone. You got to have people, you got to connect with them, inspire them, work with them, manage them, build them up, help them grow their careers. So those first three, absolutely critical. Here's three, though, that I've come up with through a lot of, I guess I'd say, battle scars and a lot of mistakes. I've made just about every mistake in the book. Curiosity. You've got to learn. You've got to listen to the market. You've got to listen to your customers. You've got to listen to your employees. And you've got to want to do that so badly that your rate of change in growth, scaling your own skills, building your software or your technology, has to be faster than your competition. If it is, you will win and you can beat incumbents. If it's not, you're going to languish. So I think the rate of learning is critical to your fate. Number two, you got to make like 10 decisions a day. 20 decisions a day. I go home, I can't even order from a restaurant by the time it gets to the evening. You pick. I don't know. I can't do it. But you've got to get good at making decisions fast. So the speed of learning plus the speed of execution is the difference maker in terms of business. You're going to get most of your decisions wrong, at least half probably. If you're really good, you'll get like 51% right. So it's really about how open you are to learning and iterating, and how quickly you can get your team to make a decision, commit to it, and go, and knowing, of course, that you'll course correct. The last one I see so often, and we're still making these mistakes at OpenGov, is systems thinking. What does that mean? It means understanding how an organization works. So if we're having a sales problem, somebody comes to me and says, "Oh, our sales suck. We're having a sales problem." Okay, have you talked with the head of sales? Well, no. Okay, well, first, let's actually talk with the person we put in charge of the issue. Now, if the head of sales doesn't think we have a sales problem, and we actually have a sales problem, we might have a problem with the head of sales. So who manages the head of sales? The chief revenue officer. So let's go talk to that person. What do you think? Yeah, it goes up like that, and you've got to tackle the problems. You've hired people to help you and build a team, and you will have team problems, but if you can't think systematically about it, and all you want to do is kind of complain or be confused and stressed, but not actually get to the root of it, you won't be able to solve the problems internally, which will allow you to manifest in good solutions for your customers. So I think this systems thinking thing is really, really key, and it's not talked about a lot, and I've had to learn it the hard way through a lot of stress. I can say that I'm thrilled to be here. I'm super honored to be here. I would encourage folks that if they want to build businesses to tackle really hard problems, that it can be done. I wish I could say we're proof positive, but I feel like I'm in the thick of the fight, and we got a long road ahead of us. But I know when I talk to customers and they say thank you or wow, we really want to do that something's happening both in government and something that in entrepreneurship, where you can go to Silicon Valley, or you can probably do it right here at home and say, we're going to do this, and we're going to get a bunch of money or people or resources or whatever we need to go take on the hardest problems to make our world a better place. So thank you so much for having me.